Zentangle Straw Sculptures.
Week 2. After week 1's practice session, create a full 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper full of Zentangles.
You're going to need some paper, a pencil eraser, Sharpie, and pen. I like to use Uniball, but you can also use a ballpoint pen. I'm not going to do the 4 dots on the side of the page like you would normally see in a Zentangle, because my entire page is going to be my composition. I can make some strings that go through the page, and strings are just dividing lines that split the page into different sections. Once you have some different sections, those are where you're going to put your Zentangles. You don't really have to worry about mistakes too much. That's not why we have an eraser. This is one of my favorite patterns because it is so easy while still requiring my brain to stay active as I do it. What I love about this particular Zentangle is that it helps me to create boundaries with my mind. Is it hard? No. Does it require concentration? Absolutely. You'll notice that it does not have to be perfect in order for it to look interesting. In my head, I try to create a little rhythm as I create the rhythm on my page. Bop 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 bop. Zentangles teach you that you can relax into your pattern and not really have to worry about mistakes. They're not the end of the world. And then you pick a different one and you fill in some different tangles.
I love the tangle where I create little tubes that go across. And every time you get to one that you've already drawn, you skip and draw. That creates overlap.
It's important to pull with your hand as you're drawing with this pen. I am not using my finger muscle. I'm using my arm muscles to pull this across. When you are done, you are going to color in the spaces in between. This is where it gets a little tricky. You have to remember where you drew your tubes and where there are no tubes. You'll notice the way that I fill in a shape. Edges, corners, and then the center. Edges, corners, and then the center.
The creation of Zentangles is very formulaic. You do a thing and you try to do the same thing over and over again for the entire section of your drawing. In this case, I am trying to color in all of my shapes very carefully so that there is extra contrast.
And the final step with this Zentangle is that you're going to add shadows. So for example, if this is going underneath of the next frame, there's going to be a little shadow. This is the process of shading. So I'm dark right next to the edge. And then as I get away from the edge, I am pressing lighter and lighter until I am not pressing at all. Find the areas where it needs shadows and color that in. Some of the most important things about Zentangles are the elements that are used. Line, shape, color, value, and visual texture. But just as important are the principles of design that you have to use in order to make this successful. There are Zentangles that are not as successful. The reason that some are more successful is because of the amount of variety that they have. That means that not everything is exactly the same, even though lots of patterns have been used. Emphasis, making sure one part of the picture is more important than all the other parts. Harmony, that is using similar kinds of lines and patterns to fill in your shapes to create that beautiful unity of the whole thing fitting together. And I think the most important of all is contrast. Contrast is one of those principles that is everywhere you look in art. Some art purposefully uses low contrast values, low contrast colors in order to make a statement. But most good art has a lot of contrast. Contrast is just the principle that deals with differences in art. The reason why this Zentangle is so satisfying to the eye is because there is so much contrast between the back of these little cubbies and the little shelves that stick out. That's another reason why I like these overlapping tubes so much, is because there's so much contrast between the very dark background and the very light tubes. And then you throw in the variety of adding some shading along with the harmonious use of just black and white and gray, a monochromatic color scheme. You've got a very successful Zentangle. That's why Zentangles are so satisfying to look at. Pattern and rhythm are why they're so satisfying to watch, create. Just the repetitive, satisfying appearance of these Zentangles on your page is why they're so satisfying to create. Another thing that I like about this Zentangle that I've made is that I have contrast across these sections within my string. So I have very high contrast between these two sections and very low contrast between these two sections. And the reason why these have low contrast is because the lines are pretty much equally spaced throughout the entire pattern, creating more of a gray value if you squint your eyes. I'm done.
5th graders with art on Monday. Guess what? You are done! Take a picture of your Zentangle and upload it to Canvas for a grade. Week 3. Cut the photocopies into 8 strips. Measure by folding the pages in half 3 times and cutting along the folds. Then roll the strips into straws and glue them shut.
Just make a photocopy of this. You're going to need 3 copies. And you can go to the library and get copies made for just 10 cents. You can even do what I did, which is take a picture on your computer and then just print it out from the computer. If none of these are possible, then just draw 3 different sheets of Zentangles.
I need to make some strips of paper. I'm going to fold my sheet of paper in half and half again. And in half again.
You will need scissors, glue, and an optional pencil for this part of the project.
I cut along the folds. I made all 32. You are required to make at least 8 straws, but more if you were able to get a photocopy.
You are going to catch the corner, a skinny little corner, and start to roll it inward. And then you're going to try to keep it rolling. Keep it rolling, keep it rolling. At some point it's going to catch and it's going to be a lot easier to roll. And then you just roll it up until you get to the top corner. Put a little bit of glue there, and then you have to hold it shut for a while. The reason why you have to hold it shut for so long is because there's a lot of built up energy in this coiled paper. And so it's going to have to be very dry in order for it to stay stuck. The corner gets bent in, and then you catch it and you start to roll. I promise this is going to get easier the more you do it. At first it's pretty hard. It can also help to put a pencil inside. Be sure you're rolling at an angle so you can get a long straw. The good news about making straws is that you can do this without paying too much attention once you get good at it. So once you have the pattern down, bend the corner, roll at a diagonal, put the pencil in, roll around the pencil. Then you can simply watch a show, listen to some music, watch sports ball, whatever you'd like to do while you create these straws is up to you. Once your fingers get the hang of it, you gain muscle memory. The muscle memory takes over after you do about 10 straws. Once you have focused on doing about 10 straws and you feel like you're pretty good at it, then you don't need as much of your attention on this skill. It becomes a lot easier to just do mindless work. That's okay. When you're trying to build something, there are going to be boring steps. Now you've got your straws made.
Monday, 4th graders. This is the end of the project for you if you choose. Take a pic of your Zentangle and your straws and upload to Canvas for a grade. Week 4. Start to build the straw sculpture by creating a tripod foundation for the rest of the project.
Time to create the base and the sculpture of your Zentangle Straw Sculpture. I just found this scrap of cardboard and I am going to glue my original Zentangle. Remember, dots not lots. This paper is very thin. The easiest way to make these straws stand up is to create a tripod. I'm going to start by gluing a couple straws together. This takes a little while to dry. If you have plastic glue, it dries a lot faster. I'm going to simply glue another straw to the intersection. This is going to take a little bit of creativity as I hold it in place while it dries.
Pro tip, if you move your fingers at all while it's drying, it will fall apart, so you'll have to hold it very still while it dries.
And now I'm going to secure it to my foundation.
Week 5. This optional step is to build up a sculpture. If you are not doing this step, be sure to take a picture of your sculpture as it stands and upload it to Canvas for a grade.
At this point, creativity is your guide. How are you going to add straws to this so that you can build it up and it's not just a series of tripods? You could balance. You could stack. You could create a tab to make one of these stand up. If you come up with a different way to create a sculpture, that's awesome. It's all you. Your sculpture will need to stand on its own. Your sculpture will need to be three-dimensional. Sculpture is a kind of art called in the round because you could walk around it and see a different angle everywhere you go.
The artist that really has inspired me for this project is Theo Jansen, who made these incredible sculptures called Strandbeests that use the power of the wind with inside tubes similar to straws to create this incredible art.
My strategy is putting dots of glue at the connection points. I'm not using too much because glue is heavy. And I don't want my project to fall down before it can even dry.
Theo Jansen's strategy was to connect these tubes in such a way so that the wind can move through them and animate them. They are like animals, and he even calls them such, saying that his production is like the evolution of these animals, and when they fall and break, it is like their extinction. Let's compare and contrast. What are some similarities that you can see between my Zentangle Straw Sculpture and Theo Jansen's Strandbeests? That's right, they're made of tubes. Mine are paper straws and his are plastic tubing. Now let's contrast the two. What are some differences between his sculptures and mine? Do you notice that his is moving and mine is staying still? When you discover a difference and you're trying to describe it, you need to state both characteristics. Check out some of the incredible movements that his Strandbeests imitate. It is a lot of work being a sculpture artist. Check it out. When his Strandbeest breaks, he has to drag it all the way back to the starting point. But oh, when they are successful, how beautiful. Look at it go. Do you see any other differences between my Zentangle Straw Sculptures and Theo Jansen's Strandbeests? Feel free to discuss exactly what you see in both and what you don't see in one or the other. As you finish up your Zentangle Straw Sculpture, I want you to think about what sorts of interesting shapes that you can create with your straws. What sorts of interesting mistakes can you make? What sorts of things can you do to wow the viewer? Sculpture is a powerful art form, and as you create your own sculpture, I want you to think about why you create, how you can wow, how can you inspire the viewer. of your Zentangle straw sculpture.
When you have used up all of your straws in your sculpture, it's now time to look for weaknesses. Are there any straws that might fall off once you move your project? I'm looking around to see if there's any spots that could cause it weakness, and then I can put some extra glue there. Remember, however, that glue is wet, which dissolves paper, and glue is heavy, which will bring your project down. So the point is to use as little glue as possible while still making sure that it is sound. So in other words, you cannot just pour glue all over your project and expect it to be standing tomorrow.
So let's take a look at my sculpture from different angles, as sculpture can be viewed in the round. Pretty cool. Not as impressive as Theo Jansen's Strandbeests, but really, what is after seeing those enormous sculptures?
This will need about 24 hours to dry, at least. I don't want to move it around too much because I might knock some of the straws free. So I'm going to be very careful with this project until it has dried. And once it's dry, you might want to shake it very lightly to see what still needs some extra glue. Once it's dry, it'll be a little bit more stable, and then you won't have to worry too much about how much glue you put on the project itself. This project has a lot of stuff going for it. It's got the harmony and the unity because the same Zentangle was used for the straws and for the base.
It also has variety in height. It has variety in angle of the straws. Yes, it's sturdy as well. And frankly, it just looks pretty cool. If you have finished your project, don't forget to take a picture from at least 2 angles and upload them both to Canvas for a grade. Meow? Bye!